Hi guys, before we start the episode, we have something very important to share.
So, a lot of research that we do for this channel is very important and dear to us. We want our facts to be as diverse, as on point as possible, and none of that would be possible without Wikipedia.
And Wikipedia is actually in a uh, crucial state where they need money to run their operations, and they have a link up on all of their pages where you can just donate some money. And even as something as simple as 150 rupees will make a huge difference. And if you think, like, if you've ever used Wikipedia and never donated, if you feel that they've at least given you 150 rupees of knowledge, please at least go donate that. Every rupee counts. You'll be doing not only us, but I think a large portion of the world a favor. Thank you so much. All right, welcome to Kadai Bench Shots episode number 6. In this episode, we'll be looking at big tech. Guys, before we start, we just like to say that this is a 3-part episode where we'll be sort of exploring what is big tech, how we got here, and what the future holds for us in terms of big tech. Adi is here. Adi, say hello.
Hi, guys. So as Purvesh said, we're going to be talking about uh, very important things that media still hasn't hit up on because a lot more important things are going on, or at least people think a lot more important things are going on. So this is going to be talking about how companies have surpassed laws and or laws have not caught up to the scale of the company's growth. And the internet, nobody has expected these companies to do so well, for them to acquire so much, for them to just become the monopolies that they have become today. And for us to learn more about that, we have arranged this 3-part shots to talk about and to give information, share information about how we got here in the first place. So this will be the introduction. So yeah, Purvesh.
Yeah, before we start, I'd like to say that's the problem. We can't even say that the companies that are considered big tech today are monopolies. Our laws don't allow us to say that. But surprisingly, they possess monopolistic behavior. That's why there is this sudden worry that, oh my God, these guys are doing everything legally, extremely legally, in fact. They're upholding the law. They're empowering the society. They have an excellent facade of being ethical. Yet, no one else is able to compete with them. No one else is able to operate in their scale. And it's a hell of a dream if you want to build a company like that today, because they just won't let you. So Adi, let's just start off. What is big tech? Tell our listeners.
See, I honestly am not very tech savvy. I mean, I am kind of tech savvy, just not up to your scale. So it's not too much I can say. I would say, okay, so imagine you want to do something on the internet. There are very few things that you do on the internet which are not connected to the big 4 companies. There are very few, let's say you want to get into the internet. Right? Internet is an actual place, is a place like Mylapore or Roypeta. The roads that lead you to that place are owned by these 4 companies. There is no way that you can get to Roypeta or Mylapore without taking these 4 roads. And every second that you go on these 4 roads, they're collecting things from you. They're presenting things from you. To you. And there is no, as soon as a smaller road comes up, which says, no, see, you can take the shortcut and you can end up to Roypeta, eventually that road will be acquired by these 4 roads, one of these 4 roads.
Yeah.
And I think this is something that we never thought would happen. So there is no laws safeguarding this not to happen.
Yeah.
So it's not illegal, just unethical.
No, surprisingly, actually, we have thought about this. There are, again, like I said, antitrust laws. They just didn't predict, because the internet is actually a new thing, right? So they didn't predict, it's a little different when it comes to the internet. And that's why, because the internet or software products in general, patents and things like that are very different in the software world. You can't say I exclusively hold the patent for instant messaging. It doesn't work like that. Anyone can build an instant messaging software. So uh, all these companies can hide behind a simple by saying, oh, look, we have instant messaging. That other small company that we haven't acquired yet still has instant messaging. We are still competing. So yeah, before I just realized we still haven't name dropped these companies. So the top 4 companies, the reason we keep saying 4 is because there was a recent congressional hearing in America where 4 company CEOs testified in front of Congress, stating their practices, and Congress wants to find out if they act monopolistically. And these 4 companies are Amazon, Apple, Google, and Facebook. But when you generally talk about big tech, companies like Microsoft, Netflix are also included in the conversation. Before we enter rigorous discussion, right, Adi, I want to sort of paint a picture to sort of explain the scale at which these people are operating. Because so many people use all of, like, let's just take these 4 companies examples, right? Apple, Amazon, Google, Facebook. They use all of their products on a regular basis, and they don't find it harmful. And they find it also innovative. Usually, the number one argument given for no monopoly is it stifles innovation. They're all very innovative products. So, but to sort of really understand why this is just a sandbox in which society operates now, I want to just paint a picture, right? So let's say you wake up, you opened Instagram and you scroll for a bit. You see everybody stocking up on essentials because there's a pandemic, right? And you're planning your day and you need to stock up. So you Google your local grocery shops names. You find out everything is closed. So then you're like, okay. Then you suddenly realize, like, let's say an hour passes, oh yeah, Amazon is selling groceries, right? So you just install their app on your phone and you buy some groceries. Now, this routine I just described, right, is so trivial, so everyday. It's sort of like saying, I drink water. Like, you don't even think about it. It's a detail people tend to miss. It's so seamlessly integrated into everyone's life. But there's one very interesting thing that people need to think about. These services are products of a company that are made to make money. And people using these services like this have become everyday actions, such as things we do for survival, like drinking water. So I'm just going to redo that same monologue I did about 30 seconds before, but just with some sexy capitalism integrated with it. So you wake up in the morning, you see everybody stocking up on essentials because it's a pandemic. So you start planning your day. You Google your local grocery shop's name to see if they're open. You find out they're closed. Now hold up. You doing this is declaring your interest in buying groceries to 2 of the world's best advertising agencies on the planet. Now let's go back to the monologue. Then you realize Amazon is selling groceries now. But like, hold on. You didn't just realize Amazon is selling groceries, okay? You probably saw an ad. That's why I said maybe 1 hour later, you realize Amazon is selling groceries. Because you probably saw an ad, because when you again open Instagram and you start scrolling, you found Amazon Pantry now selling groceries. Or you probably, when you Googled something else, or you Googled grocery shops near me again, you saw that small ad that says Amazon Pantry now selling groceries. You didn't, and then you dismissed it then, and half an hour later you remembered, oh yeah, Amazon selling groceries, I can just buy it from there. So now you install the app and you finish your shopping for the week. Again, you just use the only entry point to those services on your phone, validating its position as a middleman for business, and let Apple probably make a small cut of this whole app at transaction happen. So this seemingly normal everyday task has benefited basically the top four most valuable companies on the planet. Isn't capitalism beautiful, Adi?
Yeah, actually, in a way, it's kind of artsy, right? Like, you need to think about the previous analogy where I said somebody makes a side road, and people start taking the side road, and the company buys the side road. A good question that you can have is, why does the company even sell to to the big four, right? Why do they need to sell to the big four? Well, the reason is if they don't sell to the big four, one of the big four has enough resources, enough money to build an exact same, not exact, like almost the same road as you have as that side road next to your road, and people will have extra benefits to go on that road
because they don't need to make a small diversion and get on your small road.
Exactly. There are no ways through it. You either sell your company or just watch your company become less and less popular, and then you have no incentive to sell after a point. You either have to join them or you die trying not to join them. This is the biggest problem with many companies. Yeah, Snapchat. Right now, Snapchat is going through it. They didn't want to join. Then Instagram has stories. Then Facebook has stories, even though the same thing. Did you know YouTube has stories?
Fucking WhatsApp has stories.
WhatsApp has stories. If you guys didn't know, YouTube has stories. So everybody has stories because Snapchat didn't want to sell.
And that's the really differentiating thing about tech, right? You can't say I invented the concept of stories. It's very hard to do in tech. It's not intellectual property. Because at the end of the day, someone just wrote software. It's like saying I invented this color combination by mixing a certain amount of paint. You can, the paint owner, the paint company can say, hey, I created this paint. I own this formula to the paint. So a programming language can say, however you write this program, I own the rights to that. Like I own the rights to how you write the program. But no one who writes the program, they only own that program. They don't own the concept. Anyone can make something like an Instagram stories. They're allowed to. So that's the very, and if you start allowing people to own concepts, like whole concepts, it's very difficult because one, they're hard to define, and two, the whole technological revolution that's happened in the past 20 years will be at a demise because it's solely dependent on competition. I build something, oh, someone else built something better than me, so I build something better than them. So, and the customer makes the final call. That's how technology has improved over so long. So it's an integral part to the process. But like everything, when industry matures, you need to people come up with interesting ways to succeed, and regulators need to come up with interesting regulations to make sure that they don't stifle innovation.
So yeah, so basically when you're talking about monopoly is basically when you, a consumer, a customer, does not have the option to decide between two or more things. Let's say you want to buy soap on the internet. You go to Amazon, you go to Flipkart, you go to eBay. Right now, I wouldn't say Amazon is a monopoly, but how many of you actually go to Flipkart or eBay? What happened to eBay in the first place? Let's say you want to share your photos on the internet. I can either go to
you can't think of things, bro.
Yeah, you can either go to Instagram,
Flickr, and Snapchat.
Yeah, honestly, I could think of Flickr, but Flickr. Who uses Flickr? Yeah,
exactly.
Okay,
that is the problem. That is the problem. Who uses Flickr?
You don't have. That is a monopoly because you don't have a secondary option. You really don't have a secondary option. That is when a company becomes a monopoly. You want to search something on the internet.
Even this podcast, what is our primary way to get the word out? It's Instagram because everybody's on it.
Instagram.
We have a Twitter account.
Now we're trying to diversify into going into YouTube, right? And that's owned by Google. So what else way do we have? We don't have another way. Exactly. So that is what a monopoly is. So Puri, how did we get here? How? What is the history of getting here?
Now, there are two theories. One, that companies planned this all along, or companies planned this way before. And by generally, when people say way before, they think like 10, 20 years back. Like when they started the company itself, this was their goal. When Facebook started Facebook, this was their goal. Or like, but I personally think not. I personally think that they found something that had a lot of success. And they were like, we're going to be the number one player in the market, which is a very common, which is how the world works. I think somewhere in between, they realized they can use this number one position so that They can lock in their customers. So exactly, right? So they when you're a tech company, right, it's not like a brick and mortar store where you're sort of if you don't like one store, you go to the next store. No. If you don't like Instagram, all your friends are on Instagram, all your photos are on Instagram, all your followers are on Instagram. If you just start a Twitter account, you've lost your audience, you've lost the content you've made. So they have found interesting ways to tie down. And again, right, I personally don't believe this had the intention of, or this was started with the intention of becoming a monopoly, or let's just go in this direction and no one can compete with us. This was just a plain way of thinking, okay, people, they're not happy with us, they're leaving. What can we do? You could argue that itself is monopolistic, but you could also say this is just customer retention. So what do we do? So then they're just becoming less open. And these practices are not something that are very new in the tech world. This is just how products have been. If you use a Mac and you use Mac proprietary software, you never could port, like there are very few pieces of software that work well between Mac and Windows. It's just how it's always been. And that goes back to the history of computers, where you need to optimize things to certain architecture, and then the architecture became irrelevant because of operating systems. And I can get really technical here, but this is not something new where you sort of want to optimize for one type of use case in the tech world. And I think that's where we're at a place where you can operate without that. You don't need to optimize for you. There can be a universal standard for social media where people just post photo, people just post statuses, people just post stories. One universal format. It can be called universalsocialmedia.com. You create an account and you can link that account to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and whatever. And if someone, and in theory, someone could just use Instagram as a reader, where they read all this content that someone has posted, but someone can also use Twitter as a reader to read all this. So in theory, it's all possible now, but it wasn't possible back then. So there is reason for why things have matured this way. But I think that's how we actually got here. What about you? What do you think about this, Adi? I think this is all new to you, right? I really like having...
Yeah, it's all very new to me, obviously. So I think what I can understand through all this, right, is the virtual world is not something we got into it too fast without having a complete understanding of it. If you see like old ads of the internet, or old people talking about the internet in the past, not much has changed. Our understanding of how the internet works is the same. We just use it more frequently than 10 years ago or 20 years ago, but our understanding is the same. We have no idea of how any of this works. And your brick and mortar store is a brilliant example. See, there is nowhere where you can, let's say I go to a brick and mortar store, or okay, let's say I just go to a tangible store and I buy paper and I want to do an arts project. I buy the paper from the store and I look at the glue, and the glue is like some 100 rupees. And I'm like, no, I don't want to buy this glue. It's too expensive. I go to the next store and I buy glue for 30 rupees. Here's the problem with the internet. If I do the same exchange, I will be sold a product where the paper is not going to stick with the glue I bought from another store.
Excellent, sir.
Now I have to buy the glue, which is sold for 100 rupees. This is where the problem arises, right? If I give my data to Facebook, right now I can actually upload any picture I posted on Instagram onto Facebook at any time. But I can't do the same on, let's say, Twitter. I need to download the picture from Instagram and re-upload it to the Twitter. Or let's say I'm a content creator on YouTube, and YouTube had demonetization, and my viewers are not going to be notified that I've switched to, let's say, Twitch or Facebook. My viewership is not being dragged with me where I go. This is not a problem that happens in other industries. Let's say I'm a television anchor and I have a huge viewer base. And let's say I'm on, let's say, Channel 1, and I'm a huge anchor on Channel 1. I have a huge following. If I go to Channel 2, people can still follow me on Channel 2 because they just need to switch the channel at the time I'm on. They don't need to create a new account. They don't need to have things that they follow. They don't have to input data into it. But on the internet, you have to do all these things. It's a perfect system. It's a perfect system that gives so much power to the company, not to the creator or to the customer. That is where the problem arises, right? We have no power here.
Yeah, and one thing I want to say, right? I don't want to sort of paint this off as these companies are bad, because these companies are actually very powerful. And to be fair, not to be fair, I don't think it's being fair, but like, in their defense rather, if you operate within their sandbox, you are an extremely empowered user. You just need to cough up the price they ask. If you operate within the Google sandbox, they just want to know everything about you. If you operate within the Apple sandbox, they just want to know everything about your wallet, right? That's how, but you're a really empowered user within that ecosystem. And building that ecosystem has never been illegal before, because you could always leave the ecosystem and come out. But leaving the ecosystem has never had such big repercussions. And to take your channel example, in America, Comcast is like a cable channel. It's also studio and a cable channel. And they entered the cable market. So meaning they'll provide Tata Sky types, Dish TV, right? And the government was concerned that they'll only promote their channels. Like, let's say now we have Sun Direct, right? The government could be worried that they only promote Sun Network channels. That was the concern. So the government stepped in and said, hey, you can enter this business, no problem, but you have to make sure that you are fair to all the channels. So let's say you're a really popular anchor in a channel that Comcast owned, and you left and you went to another network's channel. Comcast could be like, hey, that single anchor leaving is going to deprive a lot of viewership. Let's just not show that channel at all. Comcast could do things like that, but it wasn't allowed to because of the antitrust and the antitrust laws in the US. But you know what I mean? That whole premise isn't even valid in the social media, in the internet space, as you mentioned, as you outlined. Yeah. And I think before we go, I'd like to give an example of this. And I'm not going to give an example of Facebook or Amazon, because those are very common examples and they have a lot of details. So I want to delve into that in part 2. But in part 1, I want to give an example of Apple, because people were surprised when Apple had to testify as a monopoly.
Hi guys, so this has been part 1 of the mini series. If you want to know about the brilliant example Purvesh is going to bring to you, please listen to part 2.
Thank you so much for listening. Nandri.
Thank you so much for listening. Nandri. Vanakkam.
Vanakkam.